First up is Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I will fully admit that I enjoyed the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie. You know, I went in with pretty low expectations because when you hear video game adaptation, that already has a ton of baggage, and then when you hear they're adapting Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a game not exactly known for its plot, you go, is this really a great idea? But I thought the first one was charming and fun, and it's also one of the last movies I saw before theaters shut down, so maybe it got an extra little boost from that, but I also just had a decent time. It wasn't anything more than it pretended to be, but it also had a surprising amount of heart for an adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog. So no surprise that they made a sequel. It does feel like they rushed it a little bit, but given how successful the first one was, this kind of felt inevitable, and unfortunately, the sequel is not as good. Maybe because the first one actually gave us expectations for the franchise to live up to, but James Marsden, Jim Carrey, Tika Sumpter, Natasha Rothwell, Adam Pally, and Majdoub all return, as does, of course, Ben Schwartz as the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog, and this time we're joined by Idris Elba as Knuckles, Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Tails, and Shemar Moore has a part in this. And, you know, I still enjoyed the movie. I almost in spite of myself, which is a terrible thing to say about a film, but I still, there were times I laughed. I think the first half is actually much stronger than the second half. When I started watching it, it was pretty overwhelming for the first few sequences. I almost tapped out and I was like, oh no, I forgot how just sort of energetic this can be. And then right when I was on the verge of being like, do I really want to finish this movie? It had a moment of calm and quiet. And I was like, oh, okay, this is sweet. I think they maybe sort of know what they're doing. The second half gets bogged down in sort of an absurd plot. Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik comes back and tries to seek his revenge on Sonic, and he teams up with Knuckles in this one because crazy lore reasons that make absolutely no sense. And this is where it starts to get lost and muddy. And then the second half of it turns into what feels like almost a platformer video game. This is where it gets too video gamey and not enough plot, heart, etc. And then like the end of it just felt like it was mirroring the end structure of the story of the first Sonic movie. So we're not reinventing the wheel here, but I did, again, the first half, there were some parts where I was like, this is very absurd, and some of this humor is very adult, not adult, but it's more aimed at adults maybe than it is young children, which is nice because there's also plenty of zany jokes for younger children, but it was nice to be like, oh, okay, there's some material here that an older audience can appreciate that isn't pandering. Also, I realized that I didn't know who Natasha Rothwell was when I watched the first one, so I sort of resented her character. And then, of course, I watched Insecure during the pandemic, and now I'm obsessed with her. And also White Lotus. But, so I just found myself more enjoying her part in this, even though her character did not change. So that's a strange sort of context thing, but that's just me. Anyway, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's not going to be as sweet as the first one, and I think sweet was an important part. I think the innocence of Sonic is what carries it through and allows you to sort of forgive his I don't want to say annoyingness, but I want to say annoyingness, his enthusiasm, his overly enthusiastic moments. So it's still fine to go see. I'm not advocating you go see it. I think if you are a parent with kids, it's a totally fine outing. You won't completely rip your hair out of your head. If you are just a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, you'll probably enjoy it. Like if you liked the first movie, I think you'll be fine with the second movie. You just won't be as impressed by it. So I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. Next up, I have a film called All the Old Knives. It's out in theaters, but it's also on Amazon Prime, and it stars Chris Pine, Tandy Newton, Lawrence Fishburne, and Jonathan Pryce. And it's a CIA thriller. It takes place in it's modern day. It takes place in modern day, and it follows all these agents. There was a huge, horrible terrorist incident that happened in the early 2010s. I don't think it's based on a true story, but it happens in the early 2010s, and then 10, 12 years later, we are opening an investigation into it to see what went wrong. Was there something, was there something amiss? Was there an insider in it? And so Chris Pine and Tandy Newton play ex-lovers who are also CIA agents, and, he's investigating her and all this stuff. And the thing about this film that was the most frustrating to me is that show me things, don't tell me things. And this film really relied on each of the characters narrating like what actually happened, and then suddenly we get cuts of, their point of view that there was no groundwork for laying, in terms of like, yes, I could see how this person did this twist and turn, or this person, I'm suspicious that this person did it because of this scene you showed me earlier, not because you're telling me that maybe this person did it because, whatever it is. It just, there were so many moments where I was like, this could have been a really strong, cool thriller, etc. But instead it felt simplistic almost, or that it didn't trust its audience to pick up on clues and things like that. And I don't enjoy when that happens. I almost wanted to say that this is a movie I'd be like, oh, my dad would probably like this because it's he likes Cold War spy, not Cold War, this is not Cold War, but he likes spy stuff, that type of thing. But then there's just a lot. I also felt like there was a gratuitous amount of sex between Chris Pine and Thandie Newton in this film. And some of it I was like, logistically, I don't know how this worked, but okay, fine, sure, whatever. I feel like they had a couple days on set. They're like, you guys, we're going to shoot a couple love scenes. Ready? Ready. They have like a decent amount of chemistry in those scenarios, but it just felt a little jarring given all the other stuff that was going on. And I didn't feel like there were a ton of stakes and stakeholders. And it's one of those movies where I was like, oh, you only had the cast together for maybe 2 to 3 days of shooting. And so that's why you had to sort of segment out all the storytelling of, hey, we're going to show this person doing this thing, but we're not going to show them all together and plant the seeds of doubt and all that stuff. And I get it. It's hard to make a movie. I don't fault them on that. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good, and it felt like it should have been good. It had all the DNA to be good, and that's always a bummer. That's almost more disappointing. There are some very beautiful shots in it, and I was like, I also feel like you had one location for an extended amount of time where you're like, we're going to film half the movie here because it's controlled and it looks beautiful on film or digital, whatever they shot it on. But, those moments do not a movie make. The plot and the characters are the most important. And also, the character motivations were, I don't want to go too much into it, but at the end of the day, all the old knives felt kind of lackluster. And again, that's a shame because you do have pretty talented people involved. So because it is on streaming as well, I'm not going to say you should not watch this movie, but I'm also not going to vehemently recommend it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give All the Old Knives 2.7 out of 5. And then the last film I have this week is a documentary called Cow. And as someone who, I generally, actually, I'm lactose intolerant, just fun story for everyone. So I don't drink milk, but I do enjoy milk byproducts. Like, I love cheese. Who doesn't love cheese? I like ice cream. And I eat burger/beef. And so watching this movie, I now don't know if I can do any of these things. It's not a scary, sad, exploitative, in-your-face documentary look at the milk industry, dairy industry, but it is in your face. Like the first scene, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler. The first scene, you are watching a cow give birth, and you are watching a cow give birth up close and personal. And then it is heartbreaking because you watch this baby, this cow has given birth to a baby calf, and then the calf is immediately taken away so they can go milk the cow, because in order to have dairy cows and have them continue producing milk for our consumption, they have to continue to produce milk, and you do that when you've had a baby. So the film is this film is gorgeously shot. It's beautiful. It takes place on a dairy farm, I think in England, and we follow this mom cow who has given birth to this baby calf. We follow the calf a little bit, and then we follow her journey. I can't believe I'm saying this about a cow. Her journey again, and just the process of dairy farming. And I don't get the sense necessarily, I could be wrong, I'm sure there are worse dairy farms than the one that they have chosen for this one. The conditions seem fine. I think the industry just as a whole is probably a lot darker than most of us realize. And it's a startling thing to come to as a realization. And also, there's not title cards, there's not plot. You just sort of follow along. And I loved that in that, we're kind of viewing it from the perspective of the cow. So things are happening and you don't know why, which is exactly what this cow is probably going to. Like, this baby cow doesn't know why it's being separated from its mom. The mom doesn't know why the baby's been, oh God, the heartbreaking moos of the cows, trying to call to each other. It's just, it's a lot. It's also, you're going to see a lot of nature things. I think I could have gone my entire life without seeing a bull's penis, but here we are. I could have gone my entire life without seeing a cow umbilical cord or, a cow uterus, but again, here we are. And again, beautifully shot. You just follow along and you're along for the ride. And I just became constantly worried about the fate of these cows. You get very attached to them. There's not, there are humans in it, but they're not characters, or they're background characters. This is really about the cow perspective, which, is a pretty wild filmmaking thing, but it really works. It's from director Andrea Arnold, who did a film called Fish Tank that I think is hard and dark and brilliant. And also she did Wuthering Heights and American Honey, which I've mixed on. She's also a director on Transparent and Big Little Lies, but I think this is her first documentary, and it's well done. It's really well done. It's just, if you ever want to eat dairy products again, I don't know if you want to watch this movie, but I guess I recommend you watch this movie because it's a smart film It's beautiful. It's short. It just works. So I'm going to give Cow 4 out of 5.